Hi, welcome back to the Gando Tech Learning channel. So today we are starting another super exciting video in terms of identity server. So you might basically, it could be familiar for you, this basically phrase identity server, but we are going to talk about this deeper and introduce basically what it does as part of the identity server. So before I start, just to basically give you a heads up, so we have an account in the Facebook. You can get in touch with us. Also, we have Instagram account. You basically could see all the news from the Gondo Tech, what's happening there and a lot of exciting small things, tips in terms of the tech stacks in these channels, and you can keep in touch with in there. So as part of this video, we are covering this agenda. What is identity server actually? Talking about the IDS terminologies in terms of the responsibilities and how IDS securing the resources, and then we would have a beautiful walkthrough to see how to implement and create an API as an identity server. And as part of this video, we're just covering the access token part, which is accessibility to the resources like APIs. And then we are going to test this API via the Postman. And finally, we would basically try to secure our exist inventory system REST API, which we already implemented in our previous video named how to create a REST API in .NET Core 3.1 and using Postman. So if you already know to how to escape folding and how to create the web API or REST API yourself, that's absolutely fine. You can just watching this video and then secure your own web API. Or if you don't have any idea about that, if you want to basically learn how to implement that API, then don't worry about that. That video is in our channel. Now you can go there and just basically watch that video and then come back here and continue and basically see how to secure that web API. So bear with us to see what would be next. So the first thing, what is a identity server? So the identity server is going to, sort of a technology or a middleware, which is um, could be basically as part of your architecture, and it's trying to stand in between the um, source, which is users or clients, and then the destination, which is your own resources within the company, for instance, and basically try to uh, check the users and authenticate and authorize the users once they are going to access to the resources. And the technology is being used is the combination of the OpenID Connect and the OAuth 2 basically versions protocol. And as part of these two things, you are able to authenticate your user and also authorize your user to access to the resources. And so we're gonna basically show you how it's going to be implemented as part of our walkthrough. So uh, the second thing is sort of terminologies which is being used as part of IDS, those sort of keywords which you basically will hear a lot once you're using the identity server. So the first thing is the identity server keyword. You already know about that. It's that middleware which is helping you to authenticate users, which means uh, basically allow users to log into your product. This is the first and initial thing you will give the user. And the second one is authorize the user. What does it mean? Authorizing the user means, so you authenticated the user, you know your user, now you want to give them the basically the right which has been allocated to them to access to the certain resources. That's really important. So the second thing is user. User is basically using the registered client, which is basically registered by your identity server to be able to access to the resources. So that's all. The client is a piece of software. The clients are all your products across the company, which is trying to access to your resources like APIs or any other basically resources which is really important to have access. And the most important thing as part of this client is your client must be registered in your API, in your identity server. That's really important. So you have to say, okay, this is the client which is going to access to our resources. So this is the information and this is the accessibility to that resource. It's really important. You have to do that before start doing anything. So the resources are something you want to protect with identity server. Simple as that. Either is it identity data like user data and or APIs, web APIs which you are using. Simple as that. And so identity data is information about the user, like name, email address, I don't know, telephone, whatever. APIs are resources, represent functionality a client wants to call. Let's say in our inventory system, you have some functionalities which is accessing to the database and doing your inventory process. Simple as that. So inventory pipeline is as part of the API, and that API is accessing to the database, and that API could be accessed by external things or anything else. So as you know, let's say the API is just a URL, simple as that. So if anyone has got that URL or any exposure about the functionalities, they can easily just do get and post and manipulate the data or fetch any data which is basically is it's it's not mm, uh, it shouldn't be like this. It should be under certain basically security pipelines to make sure the unauthorized people hasn't have not access to the anything. That's really important. So two more basically terminologies which is really important are identity token and access token. So which I mentioned in the agenda, we will concentrate on the access token. And shortly in the near future, we wanna once we wanna talk about the single sign-on as part of our basically next videos. We talk about the identity token as well. But this video is concentrating to how to secure the API, the REST API, which is concentrating on the access tokens. So identity token actually it's for authentication basically purposes. So let's say, for example, you want to apply, you want to log into your UI, let's say mobile application or your web applications or even Windows applications. So before login, as soon as you try to access to any page, it will lead you to the login page, which is coming from the identity server, and then you put your username and password, put your credentials, and these send the request to the identity server. Identity server check your authentication situation, and if it's valid, then it will return you back an identity token. Then by that identity token, you are authenticated and you can go further and access to the resources. So this is all about the identity token. The access token is allowing to access the API resources. So let's say client, as I said, is going to be your products, which is basically required to access to the resources, and they want to access. So you want to authorize them. So to authorize them, in order to authorize them, you should give them access token, and then via that access token, they will be authorized to go to that API or to that resource and use it. either manipulate the data or fetching the data. So this access token is really important for each request to the resources. So in terms of the responsibilities, there are a bunch of responsibilities which is basically going back to the identity server, like protecting your resources, authenticate user using a local account store, authenticating users using an external identity provider, because there is no not there is not a must to have internal identity server always. Sometimes is outside or external identity server which you go introduce your users, your clients resources there, and then use that external one. Or providing the session management and single sign-on, as I said. So single sign-on is one of the most important things which most of the companies now is practicing, that to have, for example, let's say you have 10 products and you want to basically apply the single sign-on. In this case, as soon as you sign in with your user sign in with one of these products, then it will be signed in with all the products. So you don't need to run a login per each product, which is really awful, or it's really hard. So every time you have to access to product A, you have to log in again, go to product 2, for example, in the middle, and then go back. You have to again log in, use that, and it's a really annoying for the users. So the new technology is to just, as soon as you basically enter one of the from one of the entrances, all the entrances door will be open for you, so you can just jump from this product to the other product and then come back. And as soon as you log out from one product, you will be logged out from others. Simple as that. But our concentration, as I mentioned in this video, is just access token, is just accessing to the resources. So we are not talking about single sign-on in this video. So managing and authenticating clients, issuing identity and access token to clients, and validating the tokens. So these are the things which we are going to talk about. And then the most beautiful and exciting part is that piece of architecture which we are going to implement. So if you have basically watched the previous video in terms of REST API, you partially see the architecture is the same. The only basically piece which is missed in the previous video is this part, which is the identity server side. So um, in in the previous video, we just basically had having clients, and then the product inventory API, and also the warehouse, and we were easily communicating with the API without any restriction, and then fetching and posting the data. But now, as part of this video and this architecture, we are going to actually adding a new component in the middle, and then try to make sure actually this client is a validated and authorized client to access to those inventory. So in this case, for any communication, actually, you have to be authorized firstly by the identity server, and then you would be able to access to the API with that access token, and then use your basically requests and get the response from there. Otherwise, you won't be able to access to that basically product. So bear with us. We're gonna start the second part, which is the implementing the identity server. Excellent. So let's go back to the walkthrough in terms of the identity server implementation. So uh, okay, so in order to implement the identity server, as part of this walkthrough, we would have two different solutions. First one is the Identity Server API itself, which is going to be basically a separate component. And the second part would be our exist REST API, which already been implemented. We just we just make slightly changes into that API to be able to make it secure and to give that ability or enable that feature into that API to be able to communicate with our uh, identity server. So this is what we are going to do. So this solution, which at the moment is open, is a brand new solution, and it's an empty, basically REST API solution. As you can see, I just created the solution for you, and to just save the time, and we are going to implement it. Right. So um, in terms of basically having this identity server, we have to run some implementation into the REST API to be able to basically introduce the um, what's the name, the identity server itself. So the first thing we are going to do is to introduce all those uh, initial registration which is required for to having the identity server. And as part of that, we are going to add some required services into our um, configuration service. So if I go to the startup, as you can see, we have got the configure services here, which at the moment the add controllers has been added already in there. So in order to do to implement the identity server, we need to add more services into our solution, which is, let's say, the first thing is adding the identity server. So in order to adding the identity server, so let's say, okay, first thing you need to do is to introduce the to adding the identity server NuGet package to be able to use the identity server. So I'm going to install the identity server, and uh, in order to do that, so you just need to search for identity server in there, and okay, slightly typo in there, so just um, set up the identity server, which is the less stable one, is version 4. uh, okay, no worry about the error, so we already have this identity server installed now. And now, as you can see, the identity server is introduced here. We need some other actually services relevant to the identity server which need to be added. And just bear in your mind, the example which we are doing here is by basically by default, we are using in-memory um, services. So this is a development mode. So we are not going to concentrate on creating a physical database, or let's say physical clients, or anything which is required for in order to have the identity server. So we build everything in memory, but it's literally easy. And if you know how to create the database, you can just easily create your database, or if you already have exist database, you just need to basically introduce that database into your identity server to give identity server basically ability to use your exist data already. So to make it more basically quicker and understandable about the whole concept of the identity server, we are using the in-memory um, config services for our to achieve our goals. So one of the things we are using is uh, actually adding the in-memory um, clients, which is one of the things, and it's very important for us because, as you know, um, so you are playing with the clients. Simple as that. You have to introduce your clients to the identity server in order to uh, communicate with your clients and having them in place. So what I'm gonna do, uh, I'm going to add, let me add all these things, all these configure in the same time and just give you the clue and basically saving the time. So as you can see, we have got in-memory clients, we have got in-memory API resources, we have got in-memory API scopes. And at the end, we are basically running the signing credentials in developer mode to just give that hint to the identity server. Okay, we are going to run a practical, basically, use in terms of the identity server. It's just, it's not something to worry about. You can just remove that line and use the proper client and resources and scopes which is coming from your database or anywhere else, and just basically allocate them to your services. Simple as that. But for sake of training or this course, we just use the in-memory one to make everything quicker and basically show you how the identity server is working. So as you can see, we need to add the clients, and again, I'm basically focusing in that point, which is we are using access token mode, which is just securing the API. We are not using the, let's say, UI or single sign-on or authentication as a identity uh, token. So that's why, as you can see, we don't have any user implementation here, like adding uh, users or whatever. So that's why we don't need users in here. We're just communicating with the clients. So it might come basically question in your mind, what is this? A config.clients or config.api resources or API scopes. So as part of configuring your identity server to be able to acting as expected, you need to introduce them the clients. Okay, these are my clients registered with this. I should be registered with this identity server. These are my resources which require to be registered with this identity server, and these are my scopes. So which says, okay, these clients against these basically scopes would be able to access and use these resources. So these are the three main things which you need to be able to basically have your clients which are allowed to access your resources. And so you just need to introduce them. They could come from everywhere, from database or anywhere else, but at the moment we just kept it simple, and we just use basically a class which is config, and then introducing these things as a simple array or in just in memory collections, and you can just use them. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a simple class, and I just create a class named config. Simple as that. I just introduce that class as a static class, and then I'm going to just add my initial things to just save the time. This is just too obvious data which is being introduced here, and then my API resources. That's it. Simple as that. Um, okay, and then put the stuff here, here, and let's get Okay, cool. That's it. So that's my config class, which are I'm just introducing the relevant scopes, introducing my clients and also my resources. So at the moment, I just kept it simple. I've got only one client in my array, which is my end-to-end client. The client ID is inventory. These values are whatever you want to basically to be. There is no any restriction or any convention for that. So I just put my client ID as an inventory. I put my client name as an inventory API, and I put basically my grant types, which in this case I'm using the client credentials. So I just put the comment here. It's used by client to obtain an access token outside the context of the user. So you need to use the client card credentials to be able to basically you having those access tokens and use them. And then you need a client secrets, so you put your secrets. It could be anything. I just put a simple example like my client secrets, and just I hash it by SHA 256. And then I've got allowed scopes, which is saying, okay, this client would allow to use my API for read and write. So this is what I basically introduce as a scope for my client. So you can add as many as client you want here. So for, let's say you have got, I don't know, 5 APIs, you want to have a separate client registration for them. So you have to introduce each of them and then put the relevant information and scopes for them, or even the different secrets. Simple as that. Just add as much as you want. And in terms of the API resources, as you can see, so I just introduced my resource. My resource name is inventory API. It could be anything you want. It's up to you. And then I introduce my scopes. Again, for this inventory API, my scopes would be read and write. And then the API secrets, again, I introduce my basically secrets here, which is saying whoever has got this information would be able to access to my resource, which is the inventory API. And then the user basically claim, which we don't have anything here. We just basically keep it simple as it is. Okay, so I'm just gonna reference all these things. Um, yes, fantastic. Good job. Cool. So we simple as that. We just introduced our scopes and clients and API resources. So the next thing which we need to do is, again, if we go back to the startup, we need to give that basically feature enabled in our application to say, okay, uh, in my in my application, please use identity server. Simple as that. So you will enable the identity server in your API to say, okay, this API is supposed to be identity server, uh, and that's it. So the other thing which basically we need to make sure is, so the app setting would be the same. So we would have basically our HTTPS port, which is going to be 44395. This is the port which we are going to communicate with the identity server. And so if we have a go and just run it to see what's this API give us. So let's run and see how it goes. Okay, as you can see, it's trying to come up with our information. Okay, so uh, okay, let me just stop this one and again go back here. So bear with me to sort out this issue. Right. So um, now what I'm gonna do, because we are not using any um, um, where is it? Any controller, I'm just going to introduce my endpoint in another way. So rather than having the map, I'm just going to endpoints dot map get to just take it to the different map, saying context, which is going to response and right saying and just I put something like I am identity server hello and I'm just going to introduce this one. That's it. Okay, bingo. So now let's have another go. It just basically rather than redirecting to any controller to for running any action, we just uh, run it through the simple, you know, writing something into the page to just say hello world because we are not expecting to have anything like that. So that's it, simple. So now it seems our identity server is up and running now. Simple as that. Simple as that. Now you have got your identity server up and running. So the only thing is remain is to make sure you would be able to access to your identity server. So the address you will use to access your identity server is this one. So whoever client uh, wants to get the access token from your identity server should have this URL. So easily just hand this URL, say, okay, this is my URL, and send your request to give you access token. If you are registered with me, that's it. So I'm just keeping this port with myself because by the way it's a local host anyway, and it's under HTTPS. So the other thing is now I'm going to run a test against my Postman. So to save the time, I just created basically my post request and get request to just show you how my identity server is working. So always, whenever you wanna basically authorize yourself as a client and get the access token, you have to send a post. Don't worry about that. We will use it in the application to just show you how in reality the Web API is communicating with the identity server. So don't worry about that. We will get into that in a minute. So the identity post is a request which you need to send from your client to the identity server to say, hi, I am a client. I want to access to your resource. Please give me the access token. And then identity server once received this post request, it will check your uh, permissions and rights, and if you are already registered and if you have a right a scope, then it will allow you to it will response you back the access token. So let's say how it goes. So as you can see, so we have got the URL. I'm just going to use my what's that, my port, which is basically a required port here, which is this one. And then the other thing is we are running basically our post, as you can see, our request as a post, and always is going to be a connect slash token. So this is a convention for accessing to the identity server and requesting for any access token. So you just need to put your URL, which I showed you in the browser address bar, which was this one, and then a slash connect a slash token. Now, what else you need to send via this post as a body? So I just choose my body as a basically a form, and I'm sending these values as part of my body to say, hey, identity server, please give me access token. I am a inventory as a client ID. Let me go back to my identity server and go back to my configuration, and I just put these two alongside each other to show you how they are talking. Right. So to make it more clear, okay, my client ID is inventory. That's it. My scope is inventory API read. Read. As you can see, I'm using this scope. So it could be either one, or yeah. And then my client secret is my client secret, which I'm using here, as you can see. And then my grant type is client credentials, which I'm using to communicate with my identity server. So these are the values you have to send via your post to give a hint to your API, to your identity server, what I'm gonna do, who am I, and what I'm gonna do. That's it. And so in terms of the header, it's going to be a normal header which you normally use, so you don't need to worry about that. Just the only thing you have to make sure your content type is the same as what you are using as a body. So it's very important. And then now, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to send my request with this body to see how it goes. Let's see. Let's have a look. Wow, exciting, exciting. Excellent. So as you can see, my request came back. My request status is 200 OK, which means Identity Server as an API received my request, and he has responded my request with 200, which everything was OK. And now, as you can see, the Identity Server has responded me with these values. The access token, it says, OK, you are valid user. You are valid user. You are a valid user, and uh, this is your access token. This is your key. This is your key to access that resource which you requested, which is inventory. And then it just gives me, okay, you have 3600 milliseconds access to your resource via this access token. So hurry up. you you have this much time, and after this basically time, this access token will be expired. So you have to get a new access token to access. and your token type is bearer. So this is the type of the access you have to use once you want to read, and the scope you can access via this key is inventory API dot read as you requested. So this is what exactly you have done. So let's say I put my client ID as an inventory one. So let's say if I send this request to my API, identity server, what we'll get? Oops, 400 bad request. Wow, something is wrong. Yes, as you can see, I will get the error which is invalid client. And obviously, it does make sense because I'm asking for an access token for the user or the client, which is not registered with my identity server. I know only the inventory one. Sorry, inventory. That's it. Or you can, let's say, request with the inventory and say, oh, sorry, and say I want to have access with write, and then send a request. Bingo, that's it. So that scope is valid, that client is valid, and the secret is valid, and the grant type is valid, so you would get the access token. So bear in your mind, the client secret and the client ID, these are the things which will be remain with the client. So whenever client want access to your resources, you should give them, once you register the client in your identity server, you should give them, okay, client, be careful. This is your client ID. This is your client secret. Don't share it with anyone. So whenever you want to access to our resources, this is your credentials. Put them in your application, put them in your request, post request, and send it to us. We will give you access token. Simple as that. So I'm going to put the read, get the access token. So I've got the access token here. Now I'm going to use this access token, and now what I'm going to you to do is I'm sending a request to the API, which is my ready-made API for the inventory system, and then see how if that basically access token is working. But before going to that, now I need to introduce you my API here. So that's it. Bingo. So this is the inventory API. As you can see, we have implemented last time in our previous video. So this inventory at the moment, this inventory system, this API is literally working without any permission, without any authorization. So it's a completely pure, unsecured, better to say unsecured API, and anyone from outside could access to this API. So let's run it. So as you can see, as I said, you don't worry about this API. If you watch our previous video in terms of how to create the REST API, you will basically easily could implement this API. Don't worry about that. Just go and watch that video. So as you can see, we have got basically our inventory API here. We have got the product controller here, which is doing some inventory functionalities like having the products, having the specific list of all products, having a specific product, having basically adding a new product into our process, updating product, and also yeah, sorry, this one is in terms of adding, inserting a product into the specific index in our list. This one is in terms of updating our product, and this one is in terms of removing our product from the inventory system. And these are the functionalities in our API. And so it's a plain actual API. I'm just need to run it, and as soon as I run it, by default, it's going to fetch all the products from the inventory and show you as a JSON format. So this is the way we could say, okay, this API is working for us, and this is the URL. So let's have a look. Bingo! As you can see, uh, in my inventory, I've got 5 products, and these are the values. So the ID is 1, the name is product 1, the price is 1, quantity is 100, the second ID, product 2, price is 1 and quantity is 200. And as you can see, we have 5 products in our inventory system. And as you can see, this URL, which is pointing to our product and getting all the products from the list. And these prove to us uh, this is working, and our API returning a values. But as you know, this API is not uh, secured. So see, I easily could, as soon as I use my URL, I can easily fetch the data from there without any permission, without any restriction, nothing. I can just easily play with the inventory system. So now, the basic thing I'm gonna add here, I'm gonna add a new attribute in my API. I stop my API and put authorized here. So now, by adding this attribute, which is the very basic thing in my into my API, and if I run it, so just bear in your mind, as soon as you run your API for the first time, it will give you a list of the product as it did previous time. But now, as soon as I run it, by adding this authorized attribute, let's see what's going on. It's trying to load all the products. Oops. Ooh, something is wrong. Of course, because now your API is protected. Yes, so now is actually, uh, you just stopped user to use that API. I'm not going to say it's secured now, but at least if the first, basically in the first glance, you can see, oh, you can't use the API anymore. So that's the first thing. Now, before using the Postman for this get, I need to secure my API. I need to secure my API, then I can use my Postman to get the data. Because at the moment, if I send this request to Postman, it doesn't care about the body, header, authorization, whatever I put here. It just give me the data because it's already not secure. So it doesn't need any of this. It just straight away give me the result. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm going to basically play with this inventory project as my API and just add some stuff alongside this authorized attribute to make my API fully secured and adopted with my um, IdentityServer API. So now, in order to do that, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to uh, I'm going to run some tweak in my uh, API to make it secure. So the first thing I'm going to do is in my configuration part, in configuration services in here, uh, I'm introducing my uh, what's the name? I'm introducing my identity server. So easily, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to take this port, and then I'm introducing my lovely identity server to my API by adding this. So, oops, okay. So now, okay, so I need to add a couple of services here. First thing is, okay, my authentication is basically happening via the bearer uh, protocol in terms of the security. And then I would say, as part of this authentication process, I'm going to use uh, this information. The first information is my API name, which I'm using. So this is the resource which I'm going to use it, which is inventory API. If I go back to my API here, if you remember, I have introduced my resources here. So this is the resource which I'm going to communicate with. And the authority which is going to be between us is this one. That's it. Simple as that. So that's the authority which you are going to use it for basically having your identity server. So bear in your mind to basically use such a thing once you wanna basically play with your what's the name uh, application. Okay, and then I just make it more exciting to add a couple of policies in my my API to say, okay, you would have, let's say, for example, I don't know, you would have two policies, which is read and write, and if you if your scope is if the access token is coming with the scope of reading, then use the read policy. If the is coming with the write scope, then use the write policy. So I will show you where I'm going to use these things in there. So the basic thing is you need to add a new NuGet package in your own API, which is the basically the validator. So uh, before using your bearer authentication, you have to add a new thing in your packages, in your NuGet packages, which is the IdentityServer access token validation. So IdentityServer access token validation, which is this one. So I think by looking at the name, you will immediately understand, okay, oh, I know what it is and what's the reason of having that. Because obviously, once you receive the access token, something must validate it to make sure, oh, okay, it hasn't been sniffed in the middle of the way. So it hasn't been manipulated in the middle of the way by hackers. So that's why you have to validate it. And this validation is happening by that basically NuGet package process, which is communicating with your identity server before giving you the response. So bear in your mind. Right. So as you can see now, our basically method is available. So now this is the changes which you need to do in your startup to introduce your new services. That's it. The second thing you need to do is basically going back to your one thing else you need to do also in your startup is now once you have basically these things, you have to enable your application to be able to use oops, what's that? To use authentication, and then also enable your app to use authorization. Super. That's it. Now you have to go back to your controller and do some tweak. So at the moment, as soon as you run your application, it's already been authorized. But if you want to, for example, make it more interactive, let's say, okay, if I have a read access, let's basically specify or authorize a specific methods with a specific policies or scopes to make it more restricted. So if you leave it now as it is, any access token comes in, and as soon as you get basically get or post anything to your API, it will by that access token you can do anything. But if you want to make it more restricted to say, okay, if I have the scope of reading, then I can just read the data, like get the data, get all products or get a specific product. So by having that, you need to make your method authorized by, you remember we have two scopes, two policies, which is read and write, which is associated based on by that basically specific scopes. So let's say if I have a scope of um, or policy of reading, then you would be able to get all the products and also uh, fetching only one product. Or if you want to have, let's say, if you have a write policy, then um, you just need to what's the name? Have the policy of write. That's it. So for any manipulation, you would have the scope of write. In this case, you can access to your API simply. So based on the scopes which I introduced for my policies, then I would be able to touch my functionality. So for any get, I will use the scope for read, and for any manipulation or post, I will use the scope of write. So now let's rerun the API to see how it goes. So again, bear in your mind, once you run the application now, it will try to get the all products based on the URL, as you can see. So if you are basically any doubt about API, how to run the web API, how to get the result and these sort of things, so please watch that video in terms of how to create a REST API video in our channel. So definitely you will get a proper coverage about APIs, and you totally and easily understand what I'm talking about. So as you can see, I try to get all the products from my API, but it doesn't working, and I will get this error. Simple as that. So now your API is literally secured, and that's it. Right. So now I'm going to go to the post and try to get the data to see how it goes. Okay, let me see. Okay, so that's my URL, which is 44 360 360, and try to get all the products from there. So see, As you can see, if you straight away use your URL and get from your API, your own API. So now don't be confused. The first step was introducing the Identity Server API, which was basically getting the access token from this side. And the second part is communicating with your own API, which is a resource, and you already secured it. So now, as you can see, I just put get, and with my body, sorry, with my basically headers and authorization process. And as you can see, I get the status 401 unauthorized. Ding ding. Uh-oh. Hold on. You are not authorized. So you can't access my resource. You can't access me. Sorry about that. I'm afraid you need to get the access token. So now I go to Identity Server. I put my information and my scope is read. And then I put send, I get the access token, copy, go back to get now. My URL remain the same, my header remain the same, there is nobody. But in get, as you remember, we said, okay, we are using the bearer to access to our web API. So you have to choose the type of your authorization is bearer token. And then in here, you have to put your access token. As soon as you put it here, oh, I think, yeah. Now, if I send my GET request to the API, ta-da! Wow, what a process. See, the status is okay, 200, okay. Now I got my result. I got my result. Simple as that. These are the products which I was expecting to see from my inventory. List of the products. Simple as that. Simple as that. And as you can see, now we have access to our resources easily. So that's it. Simple as that. But just bear in your mind, now you have access to the API. And if I go and put right here, I get the access token. I go there, copy my access token here, put my access token and send the request. See? I try to get my data with the scope of write. Just be careful. I'm trying to get the access token for writing, but I'm getting the data and I'm trying to fetch all the inventory from there with my access token, and now I'm getting 403 forbidden. You are not allowed to use the resource for reading. You are only allowed for writing. If I go back to my sorry, if I go back here, as you can see, I'm just authorized for read policy if I want to get the products. In order to using the write scope, I just able to manipulate the data. Simple as that. So you see, I just uh, I just uh, what I've done, I just checked. Now I can't access to this process. So you have to be careful. Once you want to have reading, you have to use the reader scope. And if you want to use, if you want to manipulate your data, you have to use what's the name? Um, Read. Simple as that. So the other thing I wanted to show you is so I just use my access token to read again. As you can see, I got the data. So let's say someone in the middle of the way sniff your access token and put something like 1 in the middle of the access token, if I run it, it will give me 401, which is unauthorized. So see, if for any reason in the middle of the pipeline from your basically client to the API to get the resource, someone changed the access token, you will find it out and you will just easily send the unauthorized um, result to your client. Simple as that. So it will be controlled completely with all these things. Yeah. So now, as you can see, we have managed to secure our API and then tried it with Postman. So the other thing which I wanted to show you is, as part of the previous video, we had application to use my API. So it was to say, okay, this is my API, and I wanted to communicate and fetch the data from there. I just wanted to show the basically audience how we are communicating via the to the API via our application. It wasn't only Postman because, as I basically show you via the Postman, in the previous video, in my basically creating API video, I showed them how to communicate via Postman and also create that console application to show the audience how to communicate via the code, which is most important one because in the reality, in the commercial, so we are not running the Postman job. We are communicating via the applications. So that's why basically we implemented all the things to just show them how to implement these things. So now I'm going to tweak this application, these console applications, to be able to communicate with our API. That's the thing. So let me, okay. So in order to do that, I have to run my, I'm just going to run my application. I'm just using Control F5 to run my application. Okay, so this is my API, which is already running. Now I go back to program my API. Okay, my API is this port. Okay, the same thing. So let's have a look what's going on. I'm just trying to run the oh, sorry, my bad. I have to run this one. I need to run because my API is already running, up and running. I just need to run my console application to see how it's interacting with my API. To see, oh, okay. So as you can see, if I go to the view details here, okay, so I think because of that previous run, my API is gone. So again, I will run it. Now is up and running. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new instance of this application. So let's see how it goes. Okay, cool. So now, as you can see, my product is null. My product is null. Why? Because it wasn't able to communicate with my API. Let's go to this get product async to see what was the actual response from the client. So it might be a bit, it might be a bit complex for you guys to say, wow, what is that exactly? So don't worry, as I said, just watch my previous video to show you how to implement this inventory API. That's it. So it's exactly the same. I'm just going to change this API to show you how it is working actually. So I'm just going to run the API again. So if it's up and running, and now I run my application to show you how it goes. So this is my client and this is my URI as you seen in the, I'm just try to trace it. Now let's see what's the response. Oh, as you can see, the response is 401, which is G unauthorized. Exactly. So as you can see, I don't have access to this API. That's why it was returning null and it was crashing. See, because I haven't put any control on that, which we are going to do it now. It just give you the product is null, which means it's unauthorized. So now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do some tweak in my API to just make it working with the via the identity server. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm going to uh, I'm going to add some stuff in my process. So uh, now I need to add a piece of code. So I think you can guess now if I want to ask you a question now what we need to do. So as you can see, if we read this basically method, as you can see, we are introducing the base URL, which is this one. Oh, that's fine. This is the API URL, and then try to communicate, adding some basically headers to, I don't know, having the JSON format and these sort of things, and then having the product service, which might basically class, and then uh, getting the products. So these get products, I think, is returning back all the products from the API. So if you know about the APIs, you fully understand what I'm going is action which is going to fetch the data from my API. Simple as that. So what is happening now? Uh, in this line, it's just fetching the data from API. But as you know, we have added one step in the middle. One step in the middle, which is authorization. So that's why this is the piece of puzzle which is missing. So we have to firstly put something here to authorize and get the access token, and then try to communicate with our API. So what we're gonna do now, the first thing we have to do is, if I go back to my API, get the port here and put it here, and then I need to add this piece of code here. Okay, so let's see what's that. What else we need here to, okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm going to add a NuGet package to my console application, which is identity model. It's just for case of having that method available for us in our console application. So whenever you um, to be able to send the request client credential token async, so you need to do that. Okay, so what's going on? Okay, so now uh, let's talk about this part. So as you know, once we secure the API, the process it's going to be changed. So it's not straight away communicating with the API. Now we have to communicate with the identity server. We need to get the access token, and then we need to communicate with identity, with the application, with the resource, actually. So this piece of code is communicating with the identity server and get the access token if you are valid. So this is the piece of code you need to do. You have to prepare a request. It's a simple normal request, simple as that. And your request is using the request client credentials. As you know, you remember in the Postman, we were using, let me go to the post, we were using the grant type as a client credential. So this is the one which we are simulating here. And this request has got the address, which is the identity server address. So you remember in the Postman, we were posting this address. And okay, so the address, let me make sure. Sorry, our port is this one. This is the identity server address here. And then this application is actually the client. So this is the client. Now you can feel what we call as a client. So this is a client who must have the client ID and the secret and the scope which is required to have access. So this is the address. Okay, let's go to this identity server. Introduce yourself as a client ID as an inventory. This is your client secret and this is your scope. So if you compare with what we had in the what's the name in the uh, Postman, you can see it's doing the same thing, but it's via the implementation. Simple as that. Now get the response. If the response has got any error like unauthorized or invalid client or whatever, you will catch it here and you will display it. Now, if everything goes well, if everything goes well and you have all in place, then the same, the rest of the code, because you already have your uh, access token. Now, what you need to do, you need to put your access token in here to say, okay, I've got access token, I've got a key now, and my key is a bearer token. So what it does, it's exactly what is happening in your authorization in get. So see, it will introduce the bearer token with this value. So this is what exactly will go to the uh, to your own web API. Simple as that. So okay, communicate with my API. What is my API URL? This is my port 44360, which is already there. I'm going to fetch all the data, and I'm going to fetch all the data, and also this is my access token, and my access token is inventory read. That's all. So the rest would remain the same. The rest would remain the same. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just going to run my application to see how it goes. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry, again, my bad. I have to run my inventory API. So my inventory API is up and running. Now I'm going to run my console application. Let's see what it gives us. Okay, just no worry. So I can trace it and show you. That's a good point now. So now I'm trying to communicate with my API. let's say, wow, I got a response with 200 and it's okay, which means I got the response now and I'm going to run it. Okay, so now what is happening here? So don't worry about that because this is the piece of code which I've done it previously. But my main job was here. So as you can see, I get the products and I've got my products here now. I've got all the products, and if I go back to the what's the name, console application, as you can see, successfully I fetch the data from my API via the identity server. I received my access token. I send my access token and request, which was fetching all the products from the inventory, and I receive them and I just print them out. Simple as that. So the rest of the code are doing different things. Let's say, okay, I'm requesting the product asking for number 3, and uh, basically I'm trying to print it out. It's trying to add the product, it's trying to update the product, and this one is trying to delete the product. So these are the things which is basically going to be happen. And I just, the point is I'm just going to show you the main thing, which is having the products, which is basically fetching the data and getting the response from there. So as you can see, it successfully has been done. Now, if let's say if I go to, where is it? Uh, the point is, as part of my program, I have put some, error handling. So I'm going to use them here and make it more soft for you guys. So if I go back to my program and copy my stuff here, after receiving the products from here to here, so it's sort of error handling now. I'm just going to add the relevant things. Yes, I think now we are good. And if I go back to my other things, let's run it now. I just put some error handling. I will show you, no worry about that. Just let me do one thing else. It's really annoying every time running this application. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to um, run my application in multiple startup, and I'm going to run the inventory API first and then my application. So now let's run it from scratch. Okay, so my API is coming up, it's loading. Right, and bingo, that's it. So now, as you can see, we have fetched those five request for five products from our applications, and as you can see, our policy is not allowing us to doing basically other things. And if I go back to my product controller and have a look here, okay, and now if I go to my products, so one of my, for fetching the data, I need to have the HTTP request, which is having the parameter for ID. And now if I run it, let's have a go and see what's going on. So my API is start coming up. Let's concentrate on the console application and see what we have here. Wow, excellent, excellent. So let me take this one here. Let me open up my application. Okay, let me give you a hint what has been changed in my program file to see in terms of the error handling, which I showed you. So I'm just saying here, okay, if the product is null, which means we don't have permission to fetch the product, and if the product has got value, I'm going to just print them out via the for each. And then the second job which I'm going to do, I'm just fetching the product with ID 5. And as you can see, these are the IDs. We have 5 products here. I'm just fetching the fifth one, which is the last one. And if it's null, which means again I don't have permission to fetch the product, otherwise I will print it off. Then I'm going to add a new product to my application and try to add it. And if the status code is forbidden, which means I don't have permission, otherwise I will print off the result. Again, I would introduce my update product. I'm going to update ID number 3 with this value. So ID number 3 with this value, and try to update it. If it didn't go well, it will show me the permission required. Otherwise, it will send me the result. Again, I'm trying to remove the fourth item in my list. If it's forbidden, it show me you don't have permission to delete the product. Otherwise, it prints off the result. And as you can see, um, for all manipulations which require the right policy, if I go back to my API to controller, where is it? As you can see, for these two, which is fetching the all product and product by the ID with read policy, I've got access. For any manipulations, including adding, insertion, update, and deletion, I have to have the write policy. So with read policy, I can't do anything in terms of manipulation. That's why I get do not have permission to add product, to update product, to delete product, which means my application, my identity server is giving me the right thing, and my web API is acting as expected. It just allow me two gets as I did. Now I go back to my program, which is my application, which is my basically console application. What I'm gonna do, I'm just change it to write now. Now I wanna give write scope, writing a scope to my web API. Let's see what's going on then. Now we don't need the API, we just need the console application. Wow, exciting. So now by write policy, I don't have permission to fetch the products, neither all products or one product. But I would be able to run the add. So I tried to add this value, which was number 4, but it says value is null or duplicated. And you know, in our list we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we had 4 ID, and as part of my process, I'm checking the duplication in my process. Once I'm going to add anything, I'm just check if that basically let me go there. Oh, yes. I'm checking here. If I have this ID, I will return false, which means it's duplicated. Otherwise, I will add it. So I'm just adding the non-duplicate ones. So that's why, as part of this result, I got the duplication because I was adding the exist ID into my inventory list. But it means once you get to this stage to show this basically message, which means you already authorized and you have ran this functionality, which is adding. Next, I'm trying to update my product. So I give that update. I gave that update, which is 3, and then I updated my product, which the ID was 3, and the result is true. What does it mean? Which means I already updated. So update has been done successfully. And then the last one, I try to remove the item number 4. So it's returned true, which means I already removed successfully. So to show that, let's run a tweak. I'm going to basically to make addition is successful as well. I'm just moving that above uh, that, and firstly I remove. Let's make it easy. Just put 6 in my list. That's it. So now if I run it again with write policy, I would have addition in my list as well successfully. So in this case, I would expect to receive 3 true. 1 true for addition, which is number 6 now, which is not in the list. 1 for update and 1 for deletion. As you can see, I got 3 true here. Wow, bingo. So the write policy is working perfectly as expected. So that's it. So yes, I think now confidently we could say we have our API secured by Identity Server, and our Identity Server is implemented successfully. So now, by this Identity Server, you can secure all your API resources easily, and by providing and registering your client with secret and client ID in your Identity Server, you can easily manage to secure any resource. So yes, now by watching this video at this stage, you will be confident to say you have secured your API and is easily manageable. So in shortly in the future videos, we will concentrate on UI as well to implement the single sign-on, how to basically single sign-on between different API web applications. So we're going to provide some simple web applications and try to basically to register them in our identity server, which is this one. So in the future we will use the same exist identity server, and then just introduce it, register it, introducing some test users, and then try to log in, try to access to some pages, and they will basically lead you to the login page, which is coming from the identity server, and you just log in and authorize and see exactly, and you will feel it as you did here in this walkthrough. So yes, I think these are all the things which we wanted to cover as part of this course. So I hope you enjoyed this basically video, and please subscribe to our channel to support us and also get a notification for any new video uploaded into the channel. And yeah, if there is any questions, just you can put the comment against the any videos which is basically you need to, and we will answer it as soon as possible. Also, you can follow us in Instagram account, and also in Facebook actually account, which I introduced at the beginning of the video. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much for watching.